You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and let's start today with the re-arrest of a mother who has spent years in a psychiatric facility, and those years in turn protected her from prosecution. But 2 weeks ago, she was released, deemed competent, and now she has been charged with the deaths of her 2 children again. Now, to start this story, let's go back a ways, before the 2 kids were even born. As a teen in the early 2000s, Catherine Hogel had already begun to show signs of bipolar disorder. All of this was according to her mother. But this is still in those early years of kind of keeping any mental illness quiet due to the possibly being labeled or looked down upon. And even Catherine herself had seemingly become an expert at keeping her mental illness hidden. She went on to graduate from high school and attended the local community college in Montgomery County, Maryland in 2007. There, she met Troy Turner. They had their version of a love story, and after just 1 year together, they welcomed their first child into the world, a son whom I'm going to call Jay. We're going to kind of keep his identity a little protected here. 2 years later, in 2010, their second child, a girl named Sarah, joined the family, and then a third in 2012 when Jacob was born. Now, these years were not without concern by Troy. He was noticing shifts in Catherine's behavior, but he felt like he could explain or maybe assign those changes to postpartum depression. But there were some odd claims happening by Catherine. She would tell Troy that random people were trying to break up their family. The irrational thoughts would ebb and flow, and Troy was just trying to navigate the emotions. He said Catherine was an attentive mother. That wasn't the problem. It was the kind of everyday things that started to become weird. In 2013, Troy said Catherine was starting to withhold simple and mundane things from Troy just so she could seemingly control situations. You know, like knowledge is power type thing. He said when she wasn't showing those signs of manipulation, she would vacillate between paranoid and confused. She allegedly slowly became convinced that Troy's sister, so her sister-in-law, was trying to break into their home. Now, the irrational behavior and thoughts escalated to a point that Troy said he had Catherine admitted into an inpatient program. That seemed to have happened a few times, with some success, but then some backsliding as well, where the events would become more concerning, more irrational, and eventually, Troy said he had times where he couldn't leave the children with Catherine. Now, they tried to put boundaries in place while Troy was at work, but Catherine allegedly didn't always appreciate the boundaries. She wasn't supposed to drive with the kids, but sometimes she would. She was supposed to clear all activities through family members, but sometimes she wouldn't. At this point, at least Troy had been supplied a diagnosis. Doctors had said Catherine suffered from schizophrenia disorder, and her symptoms would range from hallucinations and delusions to depression and mania. When the symptoms were at their worst, Troy would have others step in and help. Sometimes the kids would stay with family members, or sometimes someone would stay at the apartment with Catherine and the kids while Troy was at work. On Sunday, September 7th of 2014, the family attended their oldest son's soccer game, and then Troy dropped everyone off at Catherine's mother's home. Now, at this time, Catherine's parents were divorced, but even they put aside their differences to aid with the children during Catherine's mental imbalances. So Catherine's mother and father were both helping that Sunday. Catherine told her father that she had a coupon for a free pizza at Pizza Hut. So she asked if she could take Jacob to go get the pizza. Her father felt like it was a good day, and what harm could come from this outing? So he let Catherine borrow his Nissan Rogue, and at about 4 p.m. that day, she left with Jacob. When she returned from the outing a while later, she didn't have Jacob with her. She allegedly told her father this was all part of a pre-planned sleepover. She said she had dropped off Jacob at a friend's house and all was well. I'm going to remind you that Jacob is just 2 years old." Now, later that night, Troy is still at work, and it's getting time for Sarah and Jay to get to their own apartment and get ready for bed. I mean, Sarah's just 3 years old, and Jay is 6 years old, and Jacob, the 2-year-old, is supposedly having a sleepover. So Catherine, Jay, and Sarah are shuttled back to their apartment by Catherine's dad, and her dad decides to stay, just keeping watch while Catherine gets the kids ready for bed. When Troy calls to say, "Hey, sorry, I'm running a little late at work," Catherine tells him she needs things from the grocery store. He agrees to stop and grab the items, and it's late when he exits the store just before midnight. When he arrives at the apartment, Catherine meets him outside, intercepting Troy and requesting that they go grab food at McDonald's. Now, he can indulge this. This can happen because Catherine's father is with the kids inside the apartment. So, Troy and Catherine run grab food, and by this time, it's getting real late. When they enter the apartment, Troy just goes straight to bed. He doesn't go check on the kids. It's been a long day of family activities and then work. Now, it's important to understand here, Jacob, the 2-year-old, well, his crib is in the primary bedroom, and clearly we know the crib is empty. But Troy says he didn't know Jacob wasn't in the apartment. He figured Jacob was in bed with his older brother. With Catherine sleeping on the couch, Troy passes out in the bed thinking his kids are safe and asleep. The next morning, Troy awakens to both Sarah and Catherine gone from the apartment. He thinks Jacob is with them too, but remember, Jacob is supposedly at a sleepover, and Troy has no idea about this. It takes just moments for Troy to kind of start to comprehend that something is wrong here. He checks the parking lot. His minivan is gone. The keys to the minivan are gone from the counter. His wallet is gone from the counter. He grabs his phone and he calls Catherine's cell. And her cell rings right there in the apartment. So she doesn't have it with her. Troy quickly dresses his son Jay and walks him to the school bus. After Jay boards the bus, Troy calls 911. And right then, up pulls Catherine in the minivan. But the van is empty. There's no Sarah, no Jacob. And when Troy presses Catherine, she offers, some excuse about how she put the kids in a daycare. Now, I want you to envision this whole thing playing out. The dispatcher from 911 is just hanging there on the phone, listening to Troy and Catherine volley back and forth about putting the kids in a random daycare and how she wasn't supposed to be driving and how they hadn't discussed this at all. Eventually, Troy tells the dispatch that all's well and that he didn't need their services at this time. Troy then helps Catherine get ready for a treatment program that she was scheduled to attend for a few hours on that Monday. He drops her off and he goes about his daily routine. When he picks her back up at about 2 o'clock, he tells her he wants to go get Sarah and Jacob from that random daycare, and that will give him a chance to check out the facility that Catherine had chosen. Now, on the way, Troy said Catherine became evasive, not answering questions, and in general, doing that whole withholding of information thing she does. She started not giving clear instructions to the daycare. She's saying, maybe turn here. And when no daycare was on that road, Troy would flip a U-turn and try another destination. The instructions are convoluted and meaningless in some ways because she is just directing him to places that aren't even occupied buildings. Well, Troy finally loses it. He is demanding she tell him where the kids are. She says she doesn't remember where she dropped them off and that the daycare might just phone her later, so it's not that big a deal. After he demanded they go get the kids now, she led him to another fruitless destination. And that's when he told her he was driving to a police station. She then allegedly said, okay, go to this daycare. But first, I need to make a stop at the restroom. Troy said he figured he had finally broken through the manipulation tactic, so he stopped at a Chick-fil-A. And as he was waiting for her to emerge, she slipped away. Now Troy doesn't have Jacob, Sarah, or Catherine. He drives directly to the police station, and on that Monday, in the late afternoon, the search for the three began. The family was more than cooperative, including Catherine's father making a heartfelt plea during a press conference for his daughter to bring the 2 children home. 4 days later, on a Friday, an observant couple spotted Catherine just blocks from the Chick-fil-A where she had last been seen. She was taken into custody, but there was still no Jacob or Sarah. That day, Catherine provided just one extensive interview to law enforcement. During that interview, her story changed several times. At first, she stuck with the daycare story, and then that morphed into the kids being with someone, but not a daycare provider. Then that morphed into the kids were somewhere, not with someone, just somewhere. Law enforcement had both Troy and Catherine's father try to reason with her and extract information, but Catherine didn't budge. And by the time Catherine was booked into jail, most of law enforcement believed they were investigating 2 homicides, not 2 missing person cases. Well, it didn't take long for Catherine to be transferred from jail to a psychiatric facility. And that's why there is only one interview with law enforcement. If Catherine wasn't competent, they couldn't interview her. In the last 11 years, Jacob and Sarah have never been found. The 11 years had been a bit of a roller coaster. Initially, Catherine was charged with 2 counts of neglect of a minor. Then, when she wouldn't talk, charges of obstruction were added. Then, those charges were upgraded to 2 counts of abduction of a child. Eventually, Catherine was deemed incompetent, and the whole thing stayed in a holding pattern. She was evaluated and found to be incompetent more than 9 different times. During those evaluations and years of that holding pattern, the state didn't hide their intentions. They had told the judge in 2016 that they planned to file murder charges against Catherine once she was found able to stand trial. A year later, in 2017, the state dropped all previous charges and filed the 2 charges of first-degree murder. However, their suspected murderer, Catherine, well, she was still institutionalized in the Clifton T. Perkins State Hospital. Then the state ran up against the clock. See, Maryland has a 5-year rule. If a suspected criminal is not found to be competent within a 5-year span, the charges have to be dropped. And that happened in 2022 with Catherine. The 5-year clock ran out, and Catherine was still in the Clifton T. Perkins Hospital. Then we came to 2025, and at the end of July this year, Catherine was released from the hospital, and the state convened a grand jury. On Friday, 38-year-old Catherine Hogo was rearrested for the murders of her 2 children, Jacob and Sarah. Catherine's attorney is telling media outlets that the arrest is not legal. He says the 5-year cutoff is, well, a 5-year cutoff. He also contends that her current mental status is still under evaluation and that her competency has not changed. He has not said where his client was staying for those several days after her release from the state hospital and before she was rearrested, but he says it qualifies as, quote, treatment. Troy was present for Catherine's first hearing, but he declined to answer any questions or comment about the case. I have a feeling the roller coaster isn't over. So many theories have been floated about the children's potential locations, including theories that they may still be alive. A Facebook group called Find Sarah, Find Jacob has several posts with age progression photos. Candlelight vigils are still held every year on the anniversary of their disappearances. There's pictures of Troy with his babies, like crawling all over him, giving him smoochies. And little Sarah, pictures of her pulling cute, funny faces. These children were loved, and their mother clearly suffered and may still suffer from mental illness. Last year, Troy granted an interview to WMAR ABC2, where he had this to say about his 2 youngest children. He said Sarah was tough as nails and just plain amazing, and Jacob was the sweetest of the children, just wanting to be with his older brother and sister. He remembered that all in all on that Sunday that the kids went missing, well, it was a good day. Catherine was fairly stable at the soccer game and was clearly stable enough to convince her father to take Jacob to get pizza. He did say that he has some frustration about the whole sleepover story because, well, you guys 2-year-olds don't have sleepovers with friends. He did verify in the interview that he was not consulted about the sleepover, and he trusted Catherine's parents to know what was best for the children and Catherine while he was at work. Troy has advocated with Maryland lawmakers to change the 5-year rule. He said he doesn't want an unlimited amount of years, but that a mark of 10 years makes more sense than 5 years. He has also advocated for better mental health options, saying he felt that Catherine could have benefited from better treatment. He clearly stated the following about the children. These are his words. Her illness did not cause it. Maybe it made it possible, but she made a choice and she did what she did. He then added this. To my knowledge, less than 3% of people who have what she's diagnosed with are ever violent, which is a lower percentage probably than your quote-unquote normal population. He also addressed whether he believes his children are dead or alive. He said the following. That's a tough question to ask, but do I believe Sarah and Jacob are still with us? Well, it depends on who you're asking. If you're asking the logical side of my brain that looks at the facts, talks to the police, and things like that, then I believe she probably killed them. If you're asking Sarah and Jacob's father, my job is to believe in my kids and try to find them. Logically, they're probably dead, but I'm their father, and it's my job to look on both ends until we find them, one way or another. Montgomery County Police are still soliciting tips and any information that may help them locate Jacob and Sarah. That information can be submitted at 301-279-8000. Again, that's 301-279-8000. Now let me know what you think in the comments. I'm sure there are a lot of theories on this case. And obviously, as always, I will watch for updates. And now to Chatham County, North Carolina, the literal center of the state. And we're looking at a Saturday of recreational fun on Sharon Harris Reservoir. That's a sprawling 4,100-acre body of water that has long been a regional destination for fishing and boating and water fun. Well, on that last sunny Saturday afternoon, 40-year-old Quentin Gregory Kite was operating his girlfriend's Tig Weight motorboat. Two things were wrong with this event. First, Quentin had consumed way too much alcohol. Second, he was paying attention to the tubers behind his boat, not to the lake in front of the boat. Now, due to the alleged impairment and tubing distractions, Quentin plowed into a group of swimmers that were about 100 feet offshore. The impact killed 10-year-old Brooklyn May Carroll and severely injured Jennifer Stale. Jennifer's left leg became entangled in the boat's propeller and was eventually amputated just above the knee. They had to do it to save her life. And Brooklyn was removed from the water. Investigators boarded the boat, and what they found was pretty incriminating. 39 empty beer cans were found aboard, and 7 of the beer cans had been shotgunned, meaning they were consumed rapidly. Quentin has been arrested and charged with boating while impaired and felony boat marine offenses. Other charges might be added once the blood alcohol test results have been determined. Quentin remains in jail on a $500,000 bond. His next court date is scheduled for August 20th. Now, this story becomes more devastating once you know Quentin's past. Back on December 8th of 2023, so about a year and a half ago, Quentin was allegedly driving his pickup in Vass, North Carolina, when he crossed the center line on State Route 690. He struck a man who was riding a motorcycle and severely injured his leg. That rider swerved out of the way of the pickup, which probably saved his life. Here's the horrible thing. Quentin allegedly left the scene of the accident. A passerby stopped to help the motorcycle rider when he was discovered bleeding in the middle of the road near his wrecked motorcycle. Quentin was out on bond for that incident at the time of the boating accident. Now, that motorcycle rider, named Alex, spoke with ABC News 11 and provided pictures from the accident for the journalists to review. The pictures that were obtained from a security camera at a gated community show Quentin's truck is damaged, and that footage was recorded just shortly after the accident. So he has the death and the potential DUI issue from Saturday, the hit and run issue from December of 2023, and then there is his DUI from New Mexico back in 2009. Court documents say Quinton was cited for DUI in 2009, which he pled no contest to the charge and he paid a fine. Now, he had a locking device on his car for a time and completed a court-mandated DWI training. He was released from probation once that training was finished. Two people who frequent the Chiron Reservoir told the Royal Douglas News that the accident has shocked the community. One said that the lake is supposed to be a place for family and fun, and that drinking and driving a boat is no different than doing that in a car. It's reckless, it's deadly, and it has no place on our waters. That was the bold statement that he made. Brooklyn and Jennifer, well, they knew each other. They were part of a group that was visiting the lake together that day. Brooklyn was a 5th grade student at Westlake Elementary School, and Jennifer is a licensed social worker at the same school. Their families are friends. A memorial for Brooklyn has been established at the lake, and a GoFundMe has been started to aid both of the families. All right, you guys, Florida is back at it, but I can't really blame Floridians for this one because the crime was allegedly committed by a tourist vacationing in Florida. So you're off the hook this time, native Floridians, but I've learned my lesson. I never get comfortable with this state. Now, this family drama all went down on Sunday in Davenport at the Solterra Resort, an area not far from the Walt Disney World theme parks. It's alleged 62-year-old Mark Raymond Gibbon of Beaconsfield, England, was repeatedly shoving his 33-year-old daughter-in-law. It seems the fight started when the daughter-in-law and Mark disagreed about Mark's will and who gets what and under what circumstances. When the argument became even more heated, Mark allegedly shoved his daughter-in-law under the water in the backyard pool. She reportedly wriggled and kicked, but each time she came up for air, Mark allegedly shoved her back under the water, trying to hold her there. Mark's concerned granddaughter screamed for help, and neighbors phoned 911. When deputies arrived, the victim was separated from Mark, and she told authorities that she could not breathe during the attack and believed that she was going to drown during the altercation. The family members reported that the altercation finally broke up when the 9-year-old granddaughter jumped into the pool, trying to save her mother from her grandpa. When authorities spoke with Mark, he allegedly admitted to pushing his daughter-in-law underwater, but said he did not intend to drown her. He claimed they were just drinking, and when they got to talking about the will, the daughter-in-law slapped him. He said that was the catalyst for the skirmish. The daughter-in-law had no physical wounds besides a couple of scratches, and Mark was arrested on charges of attempted second-degree murder and battery. He remains in the Polk County Jail without bond. He isn't scheduled for another court hearing until September 9th. Talk about extending your vacation for a horrible reason. Now, the Polk County Sheriff commented saying that the area loves to have national and international visitors, but they do expect those visitors to behave themselves. When it's all said and done, do you think she's still going to be part of the will? Let me know what you think in the comments. And finally today, we have an arrest of the suspect in the Tennessee murders of the 4 family members and also the man who police believe dropped off a 7-month-old baby in a driveway before going on the run. On Tuesday, police informed the public that 28-year-old Austin Drummond was captured and taken into custody at about 9 a.m. He wasn't far from where he had abandoned his Audi vehicle in Jackson, Tennessee. Now, all of this happened after Austin was spotted on surveillance cameras on Sunday night. He was seen carrying a weapon or a portion of a weapon in his right hand. A shelter in place was then enacted for the surrounding area. TBI was informed Tuesday morning by 2 men that they had seen someone suspicious walking nearby. TBI then swarmed the area, and an exhausted Austin was taken in without incident. Local affiliate WMC spoke with the man who turned Austin into authorities. Ricardo Contreras was painting a house with his crew when he saw Austin lurking near the tree line. Ricardo knew about the manhunt, and he knew this guy in the tree line with his hood pulled up on a hot summer day just didn't look right. He said the following to WMC. That was amazing because when I called 911, I told her, like, I don't want to make a big thing on this, but I know you've been working hard to get this guy. And I'm not sure if it's him or not, but you need to know that it's somebody back there. 15 minutes after the 911 call, Austin was in custody. Police did offer a $37,000 reward for information leading to Austin's arrest, which Contreras said he hasn't heard anything about, but said he wasn't looking for money when he called 911 and was only trying to do, quote, the right thing. Authorities are still not sharing a potential motive, but plenty of people online believe they know why. And it seems to center around Austin's previous criminal history and the family's willingness to snitch on him. 3 suspected associates of Austin have also been arrested and charged with accessory after the fact to first-degree murder. I would love to know your theories on this case. Leave me a comment. Now to the comments from Monday's episode. We've got more on the tarantulas. A in Arkansas says the tarantulas stink. They smell. She said when she was a kid, they would let the tarantulas walk over their legs and arms. So I asked ChatGPT. Apparently, they don't emit any specific odor for mating or whatever, but their burrows, the places where they live, can really smell. And that could be the odor they are carrying with them. So that was gross. And then to another topic, we gave Jeannie and Hillary a good old jump scare in the last episode when Q decided to shake her oversized ears just kind of unexpectedly towards the end. It's not a quiet thing when she whips those ears back and forth on her head. It's actually how she wakes me up in the middle of the night if she needs to go potty. And Hillary said, seeing Q for those brief moments at the end of last week's episode, well, that brightened her not so great day. And Amber and Elizabeth and Margarita and Becky, Q asked me to tell you hi. All right, you guys, that's your Thursday episode of Rise and Crime. Thank you for being here with me and Q. Thanks for sharing this experience. Please share it with a friend. Download an episode or just copy the link and send it to someone. That is a great way to help Rise and Crime grow. Of course, I appreciate all your case suggestions, and we love 5-star reviews, likes, and follows. Any positive comments, that helps as well. We have 3 podcasts here at Oh No Media: Murder with My Husband, Into the Dark, and Rise and Crime. Join me again on Monday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.